Hi kids, well by the time you see this video it would have been a while since you've seen the other one. I had a lot of technical difficulties, but I think I finally figured it out. So we left off in the Qin Dynasty, which was from 221 to 207 BC. And as you can see here, the gap between numbers is only about 14 years, so it did not last very long. The Zhou feudal system ended. And what this means is that the Zhou dynasty, which was the dynasty before the Qin dynasty, had a feudal system. And what that means is that the feudal system worked, let me make this a little bigger, in this method. So we had peasants and slaves at the bottom. We had knights, we had nobles, and then we had the king. So the nobles were also like the government officials. So the peasants, I guess in here there are no slaves, but the peasants, they worked the lands, they created crops, they made vegetables, fruits for food. So they provided foods and services for the knights and everyone above them. The knights provided protection and military service to the nobles and the royalty and the officials. And the officials, they provided money and the knights for the king. So this is the method in which they helped each other out in that pyramid. The king gave something back in return. He gave land to the nobles, which the nobles gave to the knights, and knights gave to the peasants. So this is a feudal pyramid of power. They kind of helped each other out, and I'm sure it had its problems or its issues, but this is what worked for them. So this was the feudal system that was from the Zhou dynasty, which did not last very long after the Qin dynasty took over. So let's go back to that. All right, so government officials selected on ability and merit. So they were selected based on what they could do, what they can provide for the king, and how well I guess how helpful they could be for the king. Standardized of the Chinese legal code. This one I'm not necessarily sure what that means, standardization about the Chinese legal code. I'll come back to that one. Chinese-controlled lands divided into 40 provinces, each ruled by a royal governor. So in this dynasty, they did split up the land and had one person kind of work for the king and try to rule that area. Legalism replaced Confucianism, which were very strict code of laws. So if you guys remember, Confucianism was the belief that they ruled by doing the right thing, that there was merit. And in legalism, they had very harsh laws, and it was very violent. Many Confucianist scholars were killed during the reign of Shi Honggaidi. Yes, so this is the first part. Economics, public works projects aided in production and traded in infrastructure. So they worked a lot of producing work that was using like metals and woodwork. There was a lot of pottery, just like in the other dynasties as well. They used all of those items for trade. So those things did not just stay within their dynasty. They figured out a way to trade from different provinces or different countries. Standardization of weights, measures, and money systems. So they made it more common to have a money system. And what that means is here in the US, we have dollars. In Mexico, they have pesos. In Europe, they have the euro. So they figured out a system that worked for them. And what they mean by weights is we have pounds, we have kilos, we have ounces. So they figured out a way to kind of manage the weights. So instead of saying, oh, it's kind of heavy, they figured out a way to have it so they can keep tabs on that. Measures as well. So when we're doing long distance, there's either miles, there's kilometers, but there's also things as small as feet and inches and centimeters and millimeters. So those were our examples that we have today. They had different measuring systems for them. Culture. System of writing became uniform, so they had a better developed writing system. The end of the Qin Dynasty. Qin Shi Xingdai died in 210 BC, so this was 3 years after the Qin Dynasty came to an end. Infighting and civil war between rivals for control until 202 BC. Wait, I'm going to take this back. He did not die after the Qin Dynasty ended. So 210 falls in between here. So he died in 210, and then 3 years later, which was -3, 207, the Qin Dynasty ended. So he died fighting a civil war between rivals for control for land. Liu Bang's forces were victorious. He established the Han Dynasty. So Liu, this one here, he took over, pretty much conquered the Qin Dynasty, and then we started the Han Dynasty. There you go. So it wasn't until I finished recording the other video that I realized that I cut out a whole entire slide. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over this real quick. So for the Qin Dynasty, the emperor, and this is him right here, this is a painting of him. This is Xingshai Hangdi, and he is considered the first Chinese emperor. So this is what I mean, that they weren't called kings or considered kings. Their name was emperor. Most famous structures built under his command. So some of the most famous structures created in China were built under the Qin Dynasty, under him. One of them being the imperial tomb with 7,000 terracotta warriors surrounding it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick what that is and what that looks like. So this is the imperial tombs. This is what it looks like on the outside. But on the inside, you can find that they have been trying to well preserve these. These were the soldiers that were the 7,000 terracotta soldiers that were created to protect the Qin tomb, which is where I believe the emperor is resting or was buried. So this right here. The other thing that was created under the Qin Dynasty is, and you guys should know, the Great Wall of China. So if we look up Great Wall of China, it is so long. It is miles and miles long, but it was created to protect China from invaders, people trying to conquer. So this is what it looks like. It still stands today, people. A lot of tourists go see. And you can do some of those research on your own, but it still stands very much. All right, so let's continue. The Great Wall of China linked the already existing walls of the frontier to keep barbarians out. So there's that. Military conquest and control. Qin's armies take over what is now North China, Northern Korea, and neighboring non-Chinese tribes. So they even extended it and took over a lot of more land than the Zhou dynasty had before. Qin Shi Huangdi forms the first Chinese empire and becomes its first emperor. China gets its name from the Qin. So that is his name, Qin Shi, and that's where they get his name from, or for the Qin dynasty.